preparing. I never know. Where do I go to see this? It says it's setting up, so let's see. Okay, I think we might be live. Welcome, everyone. We are just hoping to get into our little zone again. Welcome. I know it's been a minute since Britt and I were here with you. If you're able to join us live, let us know in the chat where you are joining us from. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the astro highlights coming up in February. So we look forward to sharing a little about that with you. It is a jam-packed month. You know, it's so funny, Britt, when I was looking at February as a whole, I was thinking there isn't a large number of astrological events in February. Just the way the planets are, there's just kind of fewer things going on. But I'm like, the things that are happening are really juicy, really significant, momentous, much more maybe dramatic or significant. So it seems like there's less going on, but what is happening is really pivotal. So when you look at February, what are the things that are kind of catching your eye in terms of what's significant?
Well, I think the main event is what everyone's talking about, the Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries that's been building for some time now. That's becoming exact at 0 degrees Aries around the 20th of February, I think, in
Yep.
most time zones. And then there's lots of stuff going on with Uranus. We have some planets moving into Pisces. So yeah, there's like many different things happening that feel big. Of course, we should mention that we get the first eclipse from the Leo Aquarius series as well. So there are like some new pieces being added to the puzzle that is 2026.
Yes, exactly. Oh my goodness. I think that's a really great way of phrasing it. There are new pieces being added to the puzzle that is the year of 2026. And I think calling it a puzzle is a great thing to call. And as you're saying that, it's making me realize that certainly from an energetic or a cycles or a transit point of view, the main themes or some of the big signatures of 2026, they really kick in or take off in February. So even though technically the calendar and the new year kind of kicked over back in on the 1st of January, from an energetic point of view, this is the month where it all kind of starts. We do have that eclipse in Aquarius. We have, I think, all of the quick moving planets, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, going through the tail end of Aquarius, which means they are squaring Uranus. And of course, we have Saturn permanently settling into Aries the 13th or 14th, depending on where you are. But the big news with Saturn, as you mentioned, Britt, is that big conjunction with Neptune. So, one of the ways I've been encouraging people to think about that, it's exact on the 20th, so that's to the degree and minute. You know, we get very precise when we look at our exact connections. But the influence or the kind of orb, the sphere of time or the sphere in space where that is active, it really starts as soon as Saturn comes into Aries, so the week before, 13th and 14th of Feb. And if we use the 3 degree orb of kind of peak intensity that we get from Hellenistic or ancient astrology, it's not until mid-March that Saturn moves more than 3 degrees away from Neptune. So that's all the technical data for what I'm about to say, which is I think from mid-February to mid-March, we're in peak Saturn Neptune territory. And how are you thinking about Saturn Neptune in terms of like keywords or themes or talking points, I guess, when you're sharing about
Hmm.
this with your clients and students?
Yeah, well, there's many thoughts I've had on Saturn
Yes.
Neptune. It's been really on my mind a lot. And I think one of the first places I start is about dissolving boundaries. And
Mm,
that's really something about, Neptune's influence on Saturn. But I was also sitting with Saturn's influence on Neptune, giving
yeah.
shape to dreams, giving structure to dreams. And I was thinking about the shift from Pisces to Aries. And I really
Mm,
feel like every time I think about this Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries, the sentence that comes up is snapping out of the spell or breaking the spell, really snapping out of it. And I'm thinking of just Pisces, and we've had Neptune in Pisces since what, 2013? No, 2011, I think.
2011. Yes. Yes.
Forever. That was
Yes.
a lifetime ago. And I really
Yes.
feel like there's a lot that people have said about the influence that Neptune in Pisces has had on, the popularization of astrology or spiritual stuff. But it's also, I think, contributed to this idea of, dreaming a dream. And given that everything that's going on politically in the world right now, I think actually the move into Aries and Saturn and Neptune meeting there could be beneficial in the sense that we kind of stop, living this fantasy and this dream of like things will work out. And, Pisces as the place where both benefics do really well. Just trust and thoughts and prayers and everything will work out. I really feel that with Saturn and Neptune in Aries, we get this reclaiming of our own agency. Like, if we want to see a better world, we have to build it ourselves, not outsource it to the universe or to some kind of divine force, but actually start building it. So, I've been thinking about this as a potentially good thing, also because I'm just done with the discourse around the romanticization of war and AI and all of that. I'm like, we can do better. We can dream a different
Absolutely.
reality.
We can. And oh my gosh, Britt, you brought up so many wonderful points. Yes, I literally said this when I was with students last weekend on retreat about how Saturn and Neptune leaving Pisces, it's like waking up from this
Yes.
dreamscape, this slumber, this place of maybe idealistic, but not practical or realistic hopefulness.
Mm-hmm.
Like the sense
Mm-hmm.
that how bad is it? Like if we think about Neptune in Pisces, for anybody who's ever consumed drugs or alcohol, that kind of, slightly buzzed, am I here? Am I not here? There's sort of been this collective, we've all been on a bit of a trip together or something, like, from that drug or alcohol point of view of like, we're just disconnecting a bit. And there
Mm-hmm.
is this kind of drying out, clarifying quality that planets go through when they leave a water sign and they come into a fire sign. It's like, let's see what is. And certainly Pisces to Aries, it's like the slumber, the dream is gone, like this is here. And I love what you're talking about, the actions that we want to take. And I do
Mm-hmm.
understand, and I know I've shared in previous talks about Neptune in Aries about that sort of, are we like idealizing, Mars things, which would be war and battles. But when you look at the charts of people who have been born with Neptune in Aries, one of them is Gandhi, who was this proponent of nonviolence, like a person who actively campaigned against aggressive action in the world. And I think there's something about Neptune in Aries that maybe sensitizes us to the suffering of war. And
Mm-hmm.
then we can be more maybe compassionate towards the fact that war is maybe a terrible choice, for instance. It's just an interesting take, and I'm so glad you brought it up. That I think when Saturn and Neptune get into Aries, there is that mix of, the softening of the boundaries of Neptune's influence on
Yeah.
Saturn. Social structures, physical wars, boundaries, regulations, all of them are kind of dissolving and disintegrating. But then Saturn to Neptune is, what dreams do we want to concretize in some
Yes.
sort of actual physical form? What is so important to us that we are willing to maybe like stand up for it or advocate for it? But what do we know we need to breathe life into? Like that animating principle. And I
Yes.
think about that a lot because that's Aries, isn't it? That idea of the animation of things that have been slumbering. We think
Mm.
about nature. I live in the northeast of the North American continent, so in the southern part of Ontario, and everything is under, feet of snow right now. It is like there's very slumber winter energy because that's Pisces is associated with winter time at a seasonal point. And so the Aries is like the warming up and the coming back to life and the choosing or the setting really clear intentions. So I love what you're talking about here in terms of like what are the actions we can take at an individual level, essentially.
Yeah, and I think that drying influence of both Saturn and Aries really
Yes.
helps to get clear on what we want. Where I think Pisces can also, bring that fog or that like, well, everything, I guess.
Everything
It's like
everywhere all at once.
yes, really that kind of vibe. And I do think that Aries helps us clarify and gets us more in touch with what is here right now, really that emergence. And that's, I think, very beneficial. I mean, we do see with Neptune and Saturn structures kind of collapsing and things that we thought were solid. We cannot really rely on that, but it really also allows us to build something new that we do believe in. It gives us the opportunity
Yeah.
to reshape things. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's part of the sort of intentionality or that idea of conscious collaboration or participation is if the old forms and structures and orders, which are all Saturnian things, if they are all no longer stable or solid, if they've been washed away, if they've dissolved, if they've come apart, what is it that we want to reform? Or if we're remaking things, is there a different form or a different structure that we want to bring in? And so that timeline from mid-February to mid-March, which is also eclipse season, which I know you mentioned, we have one eclipse in February and one in March. So we'll focus on February's eclipse today. So that is a new moon or solar eclipse. It's at 28 Aquarius. It's on February 17. It is like almost everything of significance in Aquarius this month, square to Uranus. What
Mm.
are your thoughts on that eclipse?
Well, it's a new series, so it's always, starting a new chapter that will be going to experience this year and next year, where we'll have eclipses in the Leo and Aquarius houses in our charts. So that's will represent significant new beginnings and endings that will have this longer stretch that will start unfolding. And in terms of this solar eclipse, yeah, I find the connection between Aquarius and then that square with Uranus and Taurus very interesting in terms of, Aquarius being such an intellectual sign and so focused on kind of detaching from the actual lived experience and viewing things from the outside in as a way to kind of analyze like what is going on here, right? And then that square to Uranus and Taurus really, to me, feels like, okay, how can we awaken through our senses by adding that level in? Because, just staying disembodied and detached from everything that's going on is ultimately maybe removing us from what's really here. And I do
Mm.
think that Uranus square adds in that, like, okay, how can we empower and reawaken ourselves through engaging with the senses?
That's a beautiful description of that. And it's sort of like the jolt of awakening or coming back into your body or coming back to the tangible physical realm.
Mm.
And we only have a couple of months of Uranus in Taurus left, so it's
Yeah.
really interesting to me, these squares we're getting in February, because it's almost as though it's like, what other adjustments are needed? How do we remember our physicality in this very kind of heady, intellectual, technical, technological kind of time? And I think that's a beautiful, beautiful point. And so it's this eclipse, I guess, with the square to Uranus is almost like, don't forget that body or
Mm,
embodiment
mm.
piece as we go forward. Because as you so absolutely correctly mention, this is a new sequence of eclipses that we're starting. Eclipses in the signs of Leo and Aquarius. It's our first one on that axis. We're going to be having Leo and Aquarius eclipses throughout 2026 into 2027. So it really is that sense of different parts of our chart, if you're looking at the Aquarius part of your birth chart, and certainly different parts of society around us are starting to get that agitating shake up, sort of stirring the pot energy of the
Mm.
eclipse. It's a new moon or solar eclipse. It's nearest the north node. And so it really has this kind of hunger for what's next. It's like ready to dive into the new. And I think, we were saying this at the start, between Saturn into Aries, Saturn Neptune, and then this new eclipse cycle with the North Node, I don't think we could hold on to what was even if we tried.
Mm.
On so many levels, there's a sense of, okay, collectively, yes, we're clearly heading in new and different directions. But I think personally, I'm seeing this in people's lives, clients, students, friends, and family. People just either being willing to take a risk, being
Yeah.
willing to maybe put their individual dreams or priorities into the mix. You mentioned at the start about the themes of Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, and in a social dynamic or interpersonal dynamics, Saturn and Neptune in Pisces is a little bit like going along to get along. We're kind of
Mm,
all bobbing along together and nobody's clearly setting a direction. The current's carrying us a bit. Somebody pulls us here, we go there. But Saturn Neptune in Aries, it seems clearer and more intentional. And if
yeah.
we think about the cardinality of Aries, it's like I've got a particular objective that I am chasing or working towards, and kind of off we go. And I really feel a mix of those themes, I guess, very much in this third week of February, because of course the eclipse is the 17th, the peak
Yeah.
of Saturn Neptune is the 20th, right? Like it's all sort of that one week where a lot happens.
Yeah, yeah, and it's interesting because while they have no real correspondence, I think what connects like that, that Aries energy that we're getting with the Saturn Neptune and then the Uranus activation, I think both of them connect through a need to individuate, right? Like, what do you
Mm,
want?
yes.
Because Uranus is interested in empowerment and authenticity and all
Yeah.
of those themes. So I
Yeah.
think there's a link there in terms of like, okay, but where are you in the picture of all of this? Which is a good question because we're also heading into Pisces season.
Yes.
So all of that is also happening, and it's good to remind ourselves that we also have our own individual needs, and we need to, dream up those dreams as well.
Yeah, that's a beautiful point, Britt, that, Uranus being about freedom or authenticity or kind of awakening to your individuality. And then Aries, of course, that primary sign of like the I principle, the solo independent individual. You're right. Even though technically Uranus isn't doing anything for Aries or anything like that, there is a repetition of theme here when you look at the underlying essence of Aries and Uranus. And then you do mention Pisces season because almost immediately after the eclipse, 24, maybe 36 hours later, the sun goes into Pisces. But the sun is actually joining Mercury and Venus, who have spent most of the month in Pisces. So, what
Yep.
are your thoughts about the Pisces themes this month?
I mean, Venus in Pisces is great news, I think, for most of us. Venus is exalted in Pisces, so we do love an exalted planet. It means that she has extra oomph. And, in Pisces, Venus is really compassionate and she's really interested in love as a spiritual practice, which can
Mm,
be so nourishing, like nourishing for the soul, right? I mean, there
mm,
is maybe a bit of an enmeshment that's also happening, which is why that the other stuff can be helpful to kind of separate yourself from that. But enmeshment, is a very important part of forming relationships. It's the moment when two individuals become a we, and that's
yes.
really, really important as a way to bond. So I love that for Venus. Mercury in Pisces is a different story. Um, I do love Mercury and Pisces personally. I have, no problems with this placement. It's just technically, a planet in detriment and fall. So it's great for dreaming and storytelling in poetic ways. It's not great for bookkeeping or doing your admin.
No, absolutely. And that's something I think it's really important for people to keep in mind. We're talking about the technicalities, when we say Venus is exalted in Pisces, so it's a great place for Venus. She moves in on the 10th. She's there for a good 4 weeks. We really get the kind of highest expression of Venus. And so I love that phrase you use about love as a spiritual practice. And I think people might experience that in a romantic sense or with friends, or even that kind of universal love, love for other people, love for creative expression or love for the arts. It's sort of this sense of a very loving, expressive, kind of divine quality of energy. And then, yeah, when we talk about Mercury, because Mercury is actually going to be in Pisces for about 2.5 months,
Yeah.
really long,
Yeah, the
right?
retrograde, yeah.
Yeah, because Mercury moves in on the 6th of February. It doesn't leave Pisces until mid-April. And that's
Mm,
because Mercury does have its retrograde at the end of, I was going to say at the end of Pisces, at the end of February, on the 26th, it starts its next retrograde. And when like astrologers talk about Mercury being technically in detriment, Mercury is not going to do its normal great clear thinking or, sharpness with technology or strategy. as you said, it's kind of swept up in poetry and music and expressing feelings or intuitions. You know, Mercury, like we talked about Saturn and Neptune leaving Pisces and coming out of the dreamscape, Mercury's going in to the
Yeah.
dreamscape. And we'll have some really interesting messages, but it does create a little bit of a haze, doesn't it, for the
Yeah.
next couple of months?
Yeah, a bit of a mush, right? I mean, it's great to tap into that symbolic language, I think. Mercury and Pisces is really good at, imagery, I think. But it's not so great for detail. So separating like what really matters or where what to focus on can be a bit more challenging, I would say.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, Mercury is too off in the ethers with the
Hmm.
muses or divine connection. It is missing details. So there's a
Yeah.
forgetfulness, there's like a running late, oh my gosh, I completely bloopered on, X, Y, or Z. That's definitely the Mercury mood. As
Mm.
of February 6th, that's coming in real quick, real quick.
Yeah. And we have the station at the end of the month as well, right? Maybe we should mention that too.
Sure, yeah. What
Because
do you
it's
want to say
still
about the station? Tell us more.
that Mercury stations retrograde at 22 Pisces at the end of February. So in Europe it will be on the 26th. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that's in most time
Yeah.
zones on the 26th. Yeah.
So we'll get, Mercury slowing down and at that station point being super slow, and then we'll, go over all of the Pisces stuff we've done this month already. And as you said, we'll have an extended period of Mercury and Pisces. So it's really good to get acquainted with that energy and to know what it's good for and what it's not so good for. Knowing that we still, we need to do our taxes. It's tax season in the Netherlands, and
Yes,
probably the same.
yes. Same
So it's
here in
like,
Canada. The
it,
accountant's going to be emailing me for papers and documents and
yeah, it's not a great time for that, but it has to happen. So,
yes.
find the Kazemi or sweet spot if you can, but that will be later on, not in February.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's just good to know that we'll all be kind of swimming in those Piscean waters as we're trying to do our taxes.
Totally. And, like you mentioned this comment about like find out what it's good for. And I'm like, oh, poetry and philosophy. So I'm like, if you've never read poetry, you've never read philosophical text, you've never read books by spiritual, recognized spiritual leaders,
Mm.
this is a beautiful thing to do with Mercury in Pisces. And there was something else, and in true Mercury in Pisces style, it has flown straight out of my brain. It's like, and the other thing with Mercury and Pisces, we were talking about taxes, poetry. I'm sure it'll come back. I'm sure it'll come back. Um, I think one of the other thoughts that flew in that I managed to hold on to that when you were talking about Mercury and Pisces is how, like, one of the ways, just I think about astrology and planets coming in and out of signs in so many ways. It's really interesting to me that as Saturn is leaving Pisces after its once in 30-year kind of sojourn. So Saturn has been in Pisces for 3 years since March of 2023. Saturn is out, Venus is in. And so I think there's something about Venus in Pisces this year. It's almost like a more pure version of Venus in
Yeah.
Pisces than we've experienced for a couple of years because she's not going to be dealing with some of the fear or the commitment or the restraint of Saturn. And then to your point about Mercury being in Pisces, I wonder if that can be like, what do I need to get curious about? What do I need to like maybe intuit or feel into in this part of my chart and life, given that Saturn isn't here? If I just, what is spirituality or meditation or
Mm.
at a much more simple level, do you have the ability to notice the subtle signs inside
Yeah.
you? Can you pay attention when your belly is like a hard rock, or there's a fluttering
Mm.
in your chest, or there's an excitement that kind of crinkles at the corner of your eyes? There's something about Mercury and Pisces, which is sort of that more like intangible but very evocative
Mm.
ways of knowing. Oh, and this is what I wanted to say. Like the idea of how we work with Mercury in Pisces, more information doesn't help with Mercury
Mm.
here. Decision making is going to take us
Yeah.
longer. When we're like
Yeah.
looking at the numbers with the accountant, you're going to need extra time. And maybe you want to start a bit earlier so that you can catch what gets forgotten or overlooked. But the decision making or kind of thought processes with Mercury and Pisces is reviewing maybe the data or the options and then setting it down and going away and doing something that is totally inane. Take a shower, walk around the block, do the
Yes.
dishes, hang the laundry. And you almost like take your conscious attention off the decision you're trying to make. And magically, in the middle of your walk or your shower or loading the dishwasher, the best option or the best choice will just pop into your brain.
Yeah. Absolutely. I was thinking about the shower thoughts with that, and
Right?
it reminded me, I don't have Mercury in Pisces, but I do have Mercury and Jupiter in the same sign. So I'm,
You're in the auspices of it.
I get the vibe. And it just reminds me of when I was a student, I was cleaning houses for, extra income. And it was often during those times that I would get like complete poems in my head, and I would just have to stop and write them down because I would get really
Yes.
inspired. And
Yes.
yeah, it's like that kind of all of a sudden some inspiration comes to you. You either
Yes.
channel something or the muses are telling you something, or it just like you're doing something else and you get these insights and you just want to write them down. That is also, I think, Mercury in a Jupiter sign.
Yes, it is. It's that Mercury Jupiter combination of I took my attention off the thing and wisdom or insight or perspective or understanding just came upon me without,
Yeah,
effort. Okay, should we see if there's any questions? We might have time for one, possibly two. We'll see how we go. If anyone has any
let's
questions
see.
in our chat, welcome everyone who's joined us. Patricia, great to see you. Astropop, Tap and Fall, Best Mission Ready. Welcome. Astrology by Aaron. Dina is here. Debbie, great to see you all. All right. So anything we should address, Britt? Anything coming to you?
Well, there's one comment on maybe the influencer era is over. I think that was in relation to our Saturn Neptune in Aries conjunction, which is an interesting
Yes.
point.
That's a
Yeah.
great point. Yeah. I mean, may it be so. May it be so. That's a really astute point. That this whole concept of the influencer kind of is another expression of Neptune in Pisces, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then there's Astrology by Aaron asks, how do eclipses affect tightly conjunct natal planets that are strongly dignified? Do they suggest more stable long-term outcomes? Great question.
That's such a good question. So there's a couple of pieces here. Yeah, look, a planet that is strongly dignified. So this is like a planet that might be in rulership or exaltation, and maybe additionally is in a really active part of the chart in an angular place, perhaps, or maybe the 11th or 5th houses. It's got some great potential to it. So that kind of a planet has access to so many kind of resources and talents and connections. And so anytime a planet that is really strongly dignified is activated in any way, one of the outcomes is we get the good stuff out into the person's life, whatever the good stuff might be. You recognize a resource you have, you more fully start drawing on a talent or skill that is available to you. So I think that is always there for a strongly dignified planet, because essentially a strongly dignified planet, it's there in your life, but when it gets activated by a timing factor, it has a chance to really come forward. And then I know the other part of the question is uh, eclipses and would it suggest more stable long-term outcomes? That's where there's kind of a catch or a trick almost, because eclipses are not really known for stability or even longevity. Eclipses, by their nature, are these sort of pattern breaking, disruptive events. And so, what we might say if an eclipse is hitting a really strongly dignified planet, some of the ways I would think about this is there may be a long running pattern about this planet and its expression or use in your chart and life that needs to be changed right now. You're ready to change a habit or an entrenched pattern of expression. Ultimately, I think you get to a place that maybe it could be an upgraded version, or it should just be a different facet of that planet. Whether that is something you experiment with in the short term, and then there's like either a reverting back or the going forward is a combination of the two. That's maybe what I'd be thinking about. I'm always hesitant to say like stable or long term with eclipses. So I'm often like, try it on for size and see what pieces you may want to bring forward. Yeah. What about you, Britt? How would you think about Aaron's question?
Well, I think, yeah, it's very important to flag the fact that stability and eclipses are, kind of like
They
mutually
don't go
exclusive.
together. Yes.
Doesn't go together. I think
Yeah.
my question would be also, it would matter where this planet is in terms of whether it's on the north node side of things or on the south node side of things. Because with the north node, we tend to see an amplification of themes, and when we have a really dignified planet, that can be really good. Depending also, of course, on the nature of the planet. Let's say that. Whereas, a south node connection would diminish the qualities and would maybe bring more sluggishness or kind of like draining the power of that planet at that time. So I would also add that piece in to get a sense of like whether we see more of that planet being amplified and lifted up by that north node connection, or whether we kind of see an emptying out or a draining because of the south node.
Yes, that's a really good point. And so with this eclipse in February, 28 degrees Aquarius, it is a north node eclipse. So if the planet that's being hit by this eclipse, is at that 28 degrees, it's definitely got more of that, as you said, Britt, that amplifying north node energy. And then for the eclipse in March, that'll be a south node eclipse. So if that degree is important, it would have more of that emptying out. That's a really good distinction. Oh my God, I love it. Fantastic. I feel like we could all talk for days, but I know we're coming up very close to the end of our time. Do you want to try and do a quick question if there's any quick ones? Let's
I
see.
mean, a quick one, is Mercury and Pisces bad for managing or starting a business? I feel like that doesn't have to be a 5 minute.
Yes, no, that's a quick one. I mean, if you're talking about like a person born with Mercury and Pisces, they'll find their way and it may not be Mercury and Pisces that helps them because they may be more creative. If you're looking at like electional astrology of like when I should start my business, probably Mercury and Pisces wouldn't be the go. Uh, an exception might be if the business was somehow of the nature of Mercury and Pisces, like if it was healing or therapeutic or spiritual or energetic. I think I would say try to get Mercury and Pisces either before or after the shadow part of the retrograde. So that would be like before Mercury hits 8 degrees Pisces or after the retrograde all together, basically. If I was like incorporating a special beginning, I wouldn't go close to the Mercury retrograde, like the start of the Mercury retrograde. I'd avoid that week completely, regardless of the business, because that'll just add a messiness in. What about you, Brett?
Yeah, I agree. I think if it fits the nature of the business, I wouldn't be so scared about, that placement in and of itself. And I agree with the shadow and the station points, I would avoid those. I am thinking like if this is a time you're considering to start a business, we do have Jupiter exalted in Cancer as
Mhm.
ruling planet of Pisces. If we have Venus there as well, that could potentially be very juicy. So
Hmm.
if you would start at around the Cazimi point, maybe like that could be real juice there. I haven't checked the the chart for that time, but just having Jupiter in exaltation, making a trine to that Mercury in Pisces could be nice. So it's not
Yes.
it's not the end of the world, but definitely if you're a bookkeeper or accountant or doing a lot of number stuff, then maybe wait until Mercury's in Gemini.
Yes, that's a really good point. And you make a great point, Brett, is, even without the knowledge of astrology, people are starting things all the time. Businesses, relationships, partnerships, collaborations, organizations, you name it, people are starting them. And the other piece with electional or picking a date kind of astrology, it's really specific. You could perhaps comfortably have Mercury retrograde if it wasn't ruling the ascendant or the midheaven in the
Yes.
chart. And so, especially as you're saying, Britt, like Jupiter is exalted right now, maybe you're going to put Pisces or Sag on the ascendant or midheaven and really tap into that. So, I think the only kind of key period I would say just to avoid is like right around the station retrograde. Otherwise, there is that trine to Jupiter. There'll be Mercury retrograde, cazimi the sun, which will be lovely. So lots of possibilities, even with the Mercury and Pisces vibe. So, Britt, where can people find out more about you and what astrology services you're offering at the moment?
Yeah, I am offering astrology consultations. I do somatic astrology, so I always bring the body into my work to make astrology as felt and as embodied as possible. So I do astrology consultations and I do somatic coaching, and you can find my work at somaticastrology.co. I'm writing a lot. I'm in my Mercury year, so I have a substack that I'm trying to promote a bit more, and it's just substack at somatic astrology. I think that's the link.
Perfect.
So
Perfect.
I do some writing about personal reflections on the transits, and you can find my work there as well.
That's wonderful. Okay, that's beautiful. So people, you can reach out to Britt directly for any of her services or writing. I will be continuing to put all of my offerings out via the website, kellysastrology.com. One thing I do want to let you know about is for the first time, I'm going to be teaching in France at the end of March,
Yay.
which is very exciting. So if you're interested in coming on a 2-day astrology retreat, we will be in Strasbourg in the Alsace region at the last weekend in March. So details for that are on the website, kellysastrology.com. And if that doesn't suit, I have lots of webinars and teachings available on the website. Britt and I will be back at some point next month to share more. Thanks again for joining me today, Britt. It's been so fun to catch up and to get back into our groove of
Yeah.
doing our YouTube Q&As. Thank you all for listening, for joining. If you're enjoying these YouTube lives, please kind of hit the bell, subscribe to the channel